The first time I realized Skypier Metrics would gamble the building on a standing ovation, it happened in a glass studio on the 42nd floor. Not a ballroom, not a stage. A fishbowl, where the company filmed its quarterly live stream, complete with fake applause and a neon sign that read, "Future Ready." I was there to present a resilience dashboard to investors. On camera, I looked calm. Off camera, my badge was already dead. A producer counted down. 3, 2, 1. The teleprompter scrolled my name, Rowan Blake, Principal Platform Designer. Behind the camera, our chief executive, Dahlia Crest, smiled like a person who had never waited on hold. Beside her, the chief financial officer, Vance Holt, stared at his phone as if it were a conscience he could mute. I began. Charts climbed. Investors typed compliments in the chat. Then my laptop froze, not from a bug, but from a policy. A red banner filled the screen. Session revoked. Contact administrator. The irony was sharp. I was the administrator. Dahlia leaned toward the microphone and said, bright as a morning show host, "Looks like we have a tiny hiccup. Rowan will be right back." Then, without moving her smile, she ordered, "Step off set, now." A security lead approached with the tenderness of a tow truck. His tablet showed my photo and one elegant word: separated. The live stream kept rolling. The neon sign kept buzzing. He guided me into a sound booth. Inside sat Alton Ray, head of people operations, with a folder that looked expensive enough to be spiteful. Vance arrived a moment later. Dahlia stayed on set, narrating my absence as a minor weather event. Alton slid the folder across the table. "We are realigning compensation to match market signals," Vance added. "Consider it a recalibration of expectations." Recalibrate was the verb they used when they wanted your stomach to swallow a brick. I opened the folder. New title, Senior Continuity Cartographer. New salary, lower, with a cheerful paragraph about cultural synergy and total rewards. I looked at Vance. "This is a pay cut." "It is a strategic adjustment," he said, as if strategy meant subtracting digits until the truth stopped talking. Instead of arguing, I pulled a single sheet from my bag. Alton blinked. "What is that?" "My resignation letter," I said. "Printed, dated, neatly formatted, because I respect documents more than this company respects people." Vance frowned. "You are resigning during the live stream." "I am resigning during the moment you tried to turn me into a rounding error with studio lighting." Alton leaned forward. "Take a week. Think." Skypier loved weeks. Weeks were where promises went to nap. I uncapped my pen and wrote the time, 3:06 p.m. Then I signed. The security lead escorted me out. Through the glass, I could still see Dahlia telling investors our platform was built for continuity in any crisis. Behind her, on the control monitor, my dashboard flickered from green to amber. That was not sabotage. That was Harborline Relay, our ingestion engine, doing exactly what I designed it to do when key roles were left empty. Outside, the wind slapped my face like an invoice. My phone buzzed with the first alert I used to treat like a siren. Authorization drift detected. Failover keys unavailable. Approvers not found. Skypier had made me unnecessary on paper. Now it was about to learn what paper could not hold. I did not start my career as a person who collected enemies. I started as a person who collected broken systems. My first job was night shift at a copy shop. The printers jammed, the paper tore, and customers treated deadlines like scripture. I learned a rule. Nobody cares how smart you are when the machine is screaming. They care if you can make it quiet. Skypier Metrics hired me 10 years ago, back when it was a clever startup with a product and the emotional stability of a toddler. The founders built a platform that pulled data from insurers, logistics firms, and clinics, then sold the cleaned results back as forecasts. Brilliant idea. Optimistic implementation. On my first week, I found a batch job scheduled hourly that had not succeeded once in 90 days. The company had simply learned to ignore failure emails. I fixed it, wrote a runbook, and asked who owned it. Silence. So I owned it. One broken thing became 10. 10 became 50. Eventually, I built Harborline Relay, the ingestion layer that fed everything else. I designed safety valves to keep noisy clients from drowning the pipeline. I wrote monitoring that did not just scream, but pointed to the lever that stopped the noise. People started calling me the lighthouse, because I kept ships from hitting rocks nobody wanted to chart. Then Skypier went hunting for prestige. The board hired Dahlia Crest, who spoke in glossy verbs like monetize and amplify. Vance Holt arrived with her, carrying spreadsheets like commandments. They launched the Apex Ribbon Cohort, a conveyor belt of graduates from famous schools with shiny titles. The cohort members rotated through teams, attended leadership dinners, and earned salaries that made veteran engineers stare at their pay stubs like they were prank coupons. The star was Jasper Vale, director of Velocity Strategy. Jasper could build a slide deck so clean it looked disinfected. He also once asked me if our data warehouse lived in a warehouse. The truth leaked on a Tuesday. A finance analyst misfired an email labeled compensation constellation to a distribution list that included me. The recall failed. The spreadsheet arrived like an accidental confession. Names, titles, salaries, bonuses, equity. My name sat there with a number that looked tired. Jasper sat 40% higher with a bonus pool I had never been invited to. Skypier categorized builders as expenses and narrators as multipliers. The pattern was not subtle. I did not run to people operations. I ran to my notebook. For months, I had been warning leadership about a risk they refused to hear. Harborline Relay relied on institutional memory, not because I hoarded knowledge, but because Skypier treated knowledge sharing like a hobby. Documentation reviews took weeks. Training time was labeled non-billable. Every request for redundancy was answered with next quarter. So I became obedient in a very specific way. I stopped doing unofficial favors. I stopped fixing issues quietly. I created tickets for every patch. I routed exceptions through the approval chain Vance insisted on. And I implemented the auditor-friendly version of key rotation. Emergency access required a break glass procedure with 2 executive approvals. Skypier never finished assigning the break glass approvers. It required names and signatures. Nobody wanted that. So the system waited, polite and patient, for approvals that never came. By the time I walked into the glass studio for the live stream, my resignation letter was already printed. All Skypier needed to do was confirm what the spreadsheet had already said. They did. I drove home in daylight that felt dishonest. My phone kept buzzing like a trapped insect, each alert a tiny confession from the platform. Harborline relay queue depth rising, connector retrieves spiking, latency breaching client targets. The old version of me would have pulled over and started triage in the passenger seat. The current version of me made tea and sat at my kitchen table like a polite villain. At 3:22 p.m., an email landed in my personal inbox from a company I had interviewed with the week before. Subject: Welcome to Northwind Circuit. The offer was signed. The salary did not require poetic fonts to feel real. The benefits included something I had not seen at Skypier in years: respect written down. I replied, I can start tomorrow morning. At 3:28 p.m., my Skypier laptop, still in my tote bag, went black. Remote wipe, digital amnesia, delivered on schedule. At 3:31 p.m., Vance called. I let it ring. At 3:33 p.m., Alton called. I let it ring. At 3:35 p.m., Dahlia called. Curiosity is a flaw, so I answered. Rowan, she said, voice low and smooth. We are having an unexpected operational event. That was a poetic way to say the platform was choking. We need you back, she continued. Immediately. Back to what? I asked. The pay cut, the phone booth, or the neon sign? This is not the time for jokes, she said. It is always the time for accountability, I said. You just keep scheduling it for later. She tried a different angle. We can discuss adjustments after we stabilize. After. Always after. I already had the discussion, I said. You adjusted me downward. Congratulations on your consistency. I hung up. A minute later, a text arrived from an unfamiliar number. Rowan, I am not supposed to message you. Jasper is asking where the harbor line switch is. There was no switch. Harbor line was not a lamp. I typed back, tell him to look for the runbook titled Basic Reality. At 3:50 p.m., Skypier was scheduled to do a live partner showcase for its biggest client, Solace Harbor Health. The showcase was the kind of performance Dahlia loved: bright lights, confident words, proof that the company deserved its valuation. The demo ran entirely on Harborline Relay. When the data stream stalled, the dashboard did not fail politely. It froze mid-animation, a spinning icon turning in slow humiliation. I did not see it live, but I could picture it. The sales lead would have laughed too loudly. An investor would have asked why a prediction engine could not predict its own collapse. Jasper would have offered strategic context like it was a fire extinguisher. At 4:07 p.m., my voicemail filled with Vance trying to preserve dignity while sliding downhill. Rowan, we need your help. Name your terms for emergency consulting. At 4:12 p.m., an email from Dahlia arrived, subject line in all caps, because panic loves bold. Skypier recognizes your unique expertise. Please assist us in stabilizing Harborline Relay. She ended with a promise to revisit my level. It was the same promise, in different wrapping paper. At 4:19 p.m., the dashboard on my phone turned from amber to red. Break glass procedure attempted. Approvers not found. I designed that warning for honesty, not malice. Skypier had built a company on my infrastructure, then refused to assign the signatures that kept it alive. Now the signatures were missing in public, and for the first time all day, I smiled without performing. At 4:26 p.m., a new caller appeared. Not Dahlia, not Vance. A number I recognized from the executive directory. Mina Shore, Skypier newly hired Chief Technology Officer. I answered because Mina had never treated engineering like a decorative art. She had joined 3 months earlier and spent most of that time looking quietly alarmed. Rowan, she said, skipping pleasantries. I know you resigned. I also know the platform is bleeding. I need one piece of information. Where is the emergency access list for Harborline Relay? There is no list, I said. There is a blank form in compliance waiting for 2 executive signatures. Silence, then a slow exhale. Of course there is. The break glass role is supposed to be assigned by the chief executive and the chief financial officer, I said. I requested it 3 times. It was postponed 3 times. They want me to fix this in minutes, Mina said. Tell them to look in the mirror for the delay, I replied. Mina lowered her voice. They are offering you anything. Title, number, apology. Are you willing to consult? I was willing, but not as a bandage. A bandage lets people keep walking on the broken bone. I wanted the bone set in daylight. So I gave Mina terms that sounded like revenge, but were actually basic decency. Write this down, I said. 1. Publish transparent pay bands for technical roles, internally, not as a rumor. 2. Create a technical ladder that pays like leadership because systems do not run on speeches. 3. Assign break glass approvers with names and signatures today, not next quarter. 4. Enforce knowledge distribution. No critical service can have fewer than 3 trained owners. 5. Stop buying titles and start hiring skills. Mina was quiet, then said, That is a lot. It is cheaper than another public collapse, I said. Also, it is the first time Skypier has invested in stability. That is not a press release. She asked for a temporary workaround. I told her where it was, because I was angry, not cruel. The Key Rotation Runbook, page 12, It requires the hardware token and recovery phrase. We do not have the token, she said. Yes, you do, I replied. It is in the executive suite fire safe. Vance signed for it. Another pause. He did not tell anyone. Secrets are his favorite hobby, I said. Second favorite is pretending they are governance. That night, Skypier hired an emergency response consultancy. They stabilized Harborline Relay by midnight by bypassing safeguards the way people stop a leak by kicking the pipe. By morning, Solace Harbor Health demanded credits. Investors demanded explanations. Engineers demanded sleep. At 9 a.m., I walked into Northwind Circuit as a new employee, not a cautionary tale. My manager, Dr. Lena Moreno, greeted me with coffee and a welcome packet. It included a written on-call policy, a training plan, and a line that made me laugh. No heroics required. At 10:15 a.m., Mina emailed me a scanned agreement with Skypier signatures at the bottom. Dahlia Crest, Vance Holt. Both names under accountability, both strokes of ink clearly written through clenched teeth. The terms were mine. The rate was 4 times my former hourly equivalent. Payment net 7 days. Policy commitments signed before my first meeting. Work ends if commitments stall. My revenge wore the blandest costume possible. Procurement paperwork. The following Monday, I walked into Skypier headquarters wearing a visitor badge that said guest in cheerful block letters. The lobby still smelled like expensive citrus and denial. The receptionist asked if I needed directions. I told her, just point me toward the sound of panic. In the war room, Mina Shore stood to greet me. Her eyes looked like she had not met a mattress in days. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for telling the truth to the people who hate it, I replied. Vance arrived last, carrying a coffee he did not drink. Dahlia arrived after him, smiling as if we were old colleagues who had simply missed a brunch. We are eager to partner, Dahlia said. Partner is a strong word, I answered. You are hiring me. I brought receipts, not friendship. Jasper Vale sat near the back with his laptop open and his face prepared for blame. I can provide strategic context, he began. Mina cut in, patient and deadly. Jasper, please be quiet unless asked. I almost framed the moment in my mind. We started with the incident timeline. I showed the exact minute the break glass procedure failed and why missing approvers turned a safeguard into a hard stop. Vance tried to deflect. The process was not communicated clearly. I slid a printed email across the table, my third request for break glass assignment, 6 months old, with his name on it. He stared at it like it was written in a language he could not expense. Then we fixed the structure. 3 keys rule. No critical service could have fewer than 3 trained owners. Each owner had to pass a walkthrough while tired and mildly annoyed, because that is the natural state of on-call. Runbooks had to be short, ruthless, and usable at 3 a.m. If a document read like a brochure, it got rewritten. Next came pay. Skypier published salary bands internally. Engineers saw numbers instead of rumors. Underpaid people stopped doubting their own worth and started updating their resumes with suspicious joy. Dahlia called it a transparency initiative. I called it catching up to the decade. The funniest moment arrived on day 3. Jasper raised a hand and asked, "So what exactly is on-call rotation?" Mina blinked twice, then said, "It is the schedule where you learn the difference between confidence and competence. Welcome to yours." Jasper looked like someone had unplugged his buzzwords. Within 6 weeks, Harborline Relay was stable and boring, the highest compliment a system can earn. Solace Harbor Health still migrated away, not because I whispered poison, but because trust does not reboot with a patch. They called Northwind Circuit for a clean exit plan. Dr. Lena Moreno asked me, "Do you want to lead it?" I said yes, because revenge is sweetest when it pays your mortgage. On my last day at Skypier, Dahlia asked to speak privately. "I mishandled you," she said, smaller without an audience. You mishandled the idea of value, I replied. I was just the invoice that made it visible. Back at Northwind, I built a reliability group that rewarded maintenance like invention. Skypier kept its neon sign. I kept my dignity. Both of us finally learned what a company is really made of. One of us just learned it the expensive way.